The death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC at the age of 32 remains one of history's enduring mysteries. King Alexander III of Macedon was a ruler, a conqueror, and a master military strategist. Having been introduced to the warfront as a young teenager, Alexander's thirst for greatness was kindled. His empire spanned kingdoms on multiple continents today. He was on a conquest to conquer the whole world. He conquered powerful territories including the Persian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, India, Egypt, and other regions in Greece. Alexander was so powerful, a name to be dreaded during his time, but he died at a young age, and quite mysteriously too, in the palace of King Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. Many have argued about the cause of his death. Was it malaria, typhoid, or food poisoning that cut short the life of one of the world's greatest men who ever lived? Different historical accounts have provided varying reasons behind his death, even after concluding that he was a god. So, we seek to find out what killed Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was born in 356 BC in Pella, the capital of Macedonia. He was born a prince, as his parents were King Philip II and Queen Olympias of Macedon. His mother was the daughter of Neoptolemus I of Epirus, and a strong-willed woman whom many feared. Some historians believed Alexander was a god. This was because Queen Olympias claimed she had dreamt of being struck by lightning shortly before she discovered she was pregnant with Alexander. Other events that also happened on the day of his birth seem to have corroborated this theory of being a god, the son of Zeus. On the day he was born, his father's army defeated two of their opponents on different battlefronts. His father's horses also emerged as winners in the Olympics, and the Temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the world, was burnt down. It was never confirmed if he was a god or not, but from an early age, Alexander began to display special traits. His ability to tame a wild horse, Bucephalus, which his father had bought earlier, caught the special attention of his father. The horse became his lifelong companion, present in almost all his battles. Events like this and other promising traits Alexander exhibited further endeared him to his father, who spared no resources in making sure he had the best teachers. From the moment he became a teenager, Alexander came under the tutelage of the great philosopher Aristotle. Aristotle tutored him on different subjects, including philosophy, science, religion, art, and medicine. The beginning of Alexander's exploits was when he attacked a neighboring kingdom in his father's absence. King Philip II had been away at war when the Thracians, who were under Macedonia's rule, rebelled. Alexander, who was only a teenager at the time, led a group of soldiers to fight back. The team came back victorious, and this cemented their hold over the Thracian kingdom, establishing a city named Alexandroupolis. This was the first of many battles Alexander would fight in his lifetime. Historians believe it was at this point that King Philip II decided his heir would be Alexander. He went to various battles with his father, learning military strategies and tactics from him for some years. When his father was assassinated in 336 BC, he wasted no time in ascending the throne. He also made sure to remove every possible opposition he might have had. Alexander commanded over 40,000 soldiers and had a team of professionals among his entourage. They included doctors, architects, surveyors, engineers, scientists, and historians who recorded the battles. Unlike his father, who was known to tilt towards diplomacy, Alexander wasted no time in subduing whoever challenged his authority. When some tribes in the Balkan region rebelled following his father's assassination, Alexander immediately went to war against them. Some kingdoms, like Athens, called for peace and were spared, while some chose to fight and were utterly subdued by his army. He made sure to secure the northern region of his empire before journeying toward Asia to finish up what his father, King Philip, had started. During this journey, he and his army fought, defeating several kingdoms such as the Triballi and Illyrians. King Philip II had started a war campaign against the Persian Empire, and Alexander continued that trail. In the famous battles of the Granicus and the Persian Gate, Alexander the Great defeated King Darius and the Persian Empire. He further went on to take over kingdoms like Syria, Mesopotamia, Assyria, Phoenicia, and Tyre before heading on to Egypt. After taking over Egypt, he named a city in it, Alexandria, after his name. He was crowned king at Memphis in the temple of one of their gods. Alexander paid tributes to the Egyptian gods, building new monuments for them. This was all in a bid to try to blend into their culture and religion. His conquests also spread the culture of Hellenism in the kingdoms he conquered. He also tried to adapt to the customs of these cities by encouraging his soldiers to marry the local women. However, records show that these marriages did not last more than a year. Besides, many of his men did not approve of his strategy of adopting the local customs of the territories they had conquered. Alexander had also introduced some of the Persians into his army, which further aggravated the men. At some point, some of them mutinied and were executed by Alexander. But when the men saw that Alexander would not give in to their demands, they begged to be integrated back into the army, and he accepted. This was when he organized a great feast and a mass marriage between his men and the local women. After Egypt, he continued his conquest and met with King Darius for the third time at the Battle of Gaugamela. He defeated Darius again and took over the city of Babylon. He went on to conquer other cities within the Persian Empire, such as Susa and Persepolis. While he and his troops were in Persepolis, he allowed his men to ravage and plunder the city. Amid all these, a fire broke out, engulfing the whole city. Whether the fire was accidentally or deliberately started to take revenge was unknown. Although Alexander's men tried to stop the fire in Persepolis, it had already done much damage to the city. By the next morning, Alexander was said to have regretted his decision to allow his men to loot the city. While he was conquering cities in Persia, he passed through Gordium, the ancient capital city of Phrygia, where he encountered the Gordian knot. The Gordian knot was an ancient knot tied by the ancient king Midas of Phrygia. It was said that whoever untied the knot would be the king of Asia. After trying to untie the knot, Alexander cut it through with a sword, saying that it did not matter how it was loosened. He toured Central Asia, establishing many cities in his name, some of which are in modern-day Afghanistan and Pakistan. Alexander the Great conquered parts of India, defeating King Porus in the Battle of Hydaspes. In fact, he renamed a city, now in present-day Pakistan, after his horse, Bucephalus. However, he could not continue his campaign against India because of his worn-out and homesick soldiers who had been at war for years. One of his major campaign agendas was to take over Arabia, but he did not live long enough to make it a reality. Records have it that Alexander the Great did not pay much attention to his health, so his death could have been caused by several reasons. However, so many speculations surround the mysterious death of Alexander the Great, a major one being that he was assassinated. There were several plots to take the life of Alexander the Great. On one occasion, after finding out about the plot, Alexander executed one of his officers for not informing him early enough. He did not stop there, but also killed the father of the officer to prevent any thoughts or acts of vengeance. Alexander, while in a drunken state, had also killed one of his confidants who had saved his life earlier, Cletus the Black. Cletus had accused Alexander of making several decisions that were not thought through. Alexander, in a drunken rage, had thrown a spear at Cletus, killing him. While on tour in Central Asia, it was also revealed that there was a plot by his royal servants. His official historian, Callisthenes, was implicated in the plot. He was tortured, and killed. There was never really any proof of this plot, but to be the king of the world, Alexander must have lived a life of paranoia and distrust. He did not want to end up the way his father did. His paranoia and poor mental health worsened towards the end of his life. The death of his best friend Hephaestion, with whom he had shared a strong bond from an early age, was a major occurrence that triggered him. There were suspicions that Alexander and Hephaestion had been more than just friends, lovers in fact. Nonetheless, Alexander was greatly affected by his friend's death. He organized an expensive burial ceremony and decreed a public day of mourning on Hephaestion's behalf. There was no doubt that, just like his father, he made a lot of enemies while on his conqueror's quest. Some schools of thought believe he was poisoned, seeing that he drank wine a lot, which of course was typical of most rulers at the time, while more recent research has termed the cause of his death as either malaria or typhoid. One account, written by Plutarch, an ancient historian, states that Alexander the Great was in the Babylonian palace of Nebuchadnezzar, where he entertained some important guests. It is said that they had drunk wine all night up until the next day. After this, he had a fever that worsened until he could not speak anymore. A popular painting depicts him lying in bed as his soldiers marched past him in solidarity, and he waved back at them. Another account writes that Alexander had drunk a huge gourd of unmixed wine in honor of Heracles, a god highly esteemed by the Greeks. After this, he grew weaker and weaker for about 11 days before giving up the ghost in agony. Some other historians believe Alexander was poisoned, and Antipater, the general he had left behind at home to take care of affairs, was behind it. Antipater had always been at odds with Olympias, Alexander's mother. They purported that Antipater's son, Iolaus, was Alexander's wine pourer and could have also been the one to poison the wine. This theory of poisoning was refuted, with a major reason being that it took about 10 to 12 days for Alexander to die. At that time, there was no known poison able to take effect for that long. However, investigations in the 21st century show that there was a plant that could have done the trick. More recent investigations into the cause of Alexander the Great's death have resulted in several diseases, including malaria, typhoid fever, meningitis, West Nile virus, acute pancreatitis, and so on. These diseases supposedly fit into the symptoms that Alexander faced, as described by the accounts. Some say that his love for wine and the death of his best friend could have also affected his health mentally and physically. After almost 2 weeks of illness, Alexander the Great died in June 323 BC. The exact date of his death is unconfirmed. His body did not decay immediately, and this was acclaimed to be a sign of his divinity. However, recent research proposes that he could have suffered from a perforated bowel, a condition that could lead to paralysis, which made one look dead before they died. With this theory, Alexander may have been alive for the 6 days his body did not decay. He was eventually killed when his physicians embalmed him. Their embalming process involved the disembowelment of the corpse. His body was laid in a gold sarcophagus and headed for Macedon for its final resting place. It was intercepted by King Ptolemy, who took it to Memphis, from where it was transferred to Alexandria, Egypt, where it remained displayed in a glass sarcophagus and had prominent visitors such as Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Emperor Augustus. Where his body currently lies remains unknown. After Alexander the Great died, the empire he had worked so hard to build began to crumble. He might have been good at many other things, but a succession plan was not one of them. He did not have any apparent heir or any son trained enough to take over from him. He had also been so occupied with extending the borders of his reign that he neglected his home kingdom, greatly depleting the men who were of age to fight. Without a strong base there, the Macedonian Empire quickly lost its strength and glory. He had married 3 wives, Roxanne and the Persian princesses, Statera and Parysatis. He loved Roxanne greatly. It was said to have been a case of love at first sight. On the other hand, his other marriages were for political reasons. He had 2 children, one by Roxanne, Alexander IV, whom he never got to see, and Heracles, the son of one of his concubines. Roxanne had been pregnant with his son, Alexander IV, before he died. Alexander IV was born shortly after his father's death and was made to rule alongside his uncle, Philip III. The duo did not reign for long as fighting broke out between the Macedonians, and they were both killed. Alexander the Great stood out as a great leader during this time because of the tactics and strategies he devised to defeat his enemies. The years spent under the tutelage of philosophers like Aristotle paid off well for him on the war front. He did not kill needlessly and always felt the need to try and blend into existing cultures and traditions. He, however, extended the Hellenistic culture that his father promoted far beyond the Macedonian borders, so that the Greek language became the lingua franca of Europe and East Asia until the end of the Middle Ages in the 15th century AD. Alexander the Great was succeeded by 4 of his generals, Antigonus, Cassander, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. They were known as the Diadochi, meaning the successors, and they divided his empire into 4 regions. For centuries, many of the areas he had conquered remained under the influence of the Greeks, elongating the Hellenistic era. Alexander was never defeated in battle, and his military tactics were studied and imitated by many other rulers. In fact, these tactics are still being taught in military academies around the world today. He was a role model to these rulers from different regions, including the Romans and the Asians. Several sculptures, art objects, and paintings are attributed to him. Movies that tried to portray the life and times of Alexander the Great have also been produced in recent times. Even after his death, he was a regular figure in the currency of different kingdoms. Although Alexander the Great sought to preserve and expand the dynasty his father had founded, the king of Macedon died before he could finalize his desires, and without a worthy heir to continue the legacy, the empire quickly fell apart after his death. Mysteries surround the 4th century BC royal family of the Macedonian Empire. From the inconclusive findings on the conspirators behind King Philip II's assassination to the mysterious death of Alexander the Great, a long trail of questions about the family has lingered to this day.